we'll try and do our best to keep on time. And for those of you coming in, definitely recommend sitting towards the front because we're going to have some slides. The room, it might be slightly bit hard to see from the back. So day 2, are you guys excited? Been good so far? Yeah? Awesome. You can tell I've had 1 cup of coffee so far. Just
one?
The one. Just the 1 cup. No, well, 1 bigger cup. This is the 2nd cup. More to come.
I think we'll give people just 1 more minute. And thank you guys all for coming. For those of you who are in Jake's presentation, you saw the hashtag Klaviyo Boss, Klaviyo capital B, capital O, capital S. If you guys want to chat about Dan and Sean here on Twitter. We'll kick things off. This is our first Klaviyo Live session of the day. We're going to be talking about taking forms to the next level. So those who were in Jake's keynotes, he did touch on some of our functionality. Dan and Sean here on our product and engineering teams are going to take a deeper dive. They're specifically going to highlight some of our new features here. So if you guys would help me in welcoming Sean and Dan.
Hey everyone, how are you guys doing? See some energy and fun faces, some people I met yesterday. I'm super excited. Sean and I, we were excited yesterday. We're even more excited today to share with you some of the really exciting things that we've built with our Signup Form product and show you some cool stuff that you can do. But before I launch into that, can I just get a raise of hands real quick? How many of you have a sign-up form on your website? I expect the vast majority. Yep, cool, all right. Those questions that you know you're going to get a good answer to, right? And second, how many of you dynamically change your website depending on who's visiting? I don't know if I saw a hand. There's one, couple, maybe one in the back, a shaky hand. All right, we're gonna talk a little bit about that and why it's really important and how sign-up forms might be a misnomer as we continue to develop this product because we're really getting into a whole different ballgame. So with that, recap of Klaviyo Forms. Yesterday we gave a presentation that went over some of the basics of sign-up forms. We're going to talk about those again and very briefly. We're going to go through some of the tips that we said, and then we're going to dive into 3 big ways to use forms for more than just sign-ups. Now, fair warning, it will be a lot, it will be fast. We will pause at one point in the middle of the presentation for questions, which we'll limit for a minute and a half so we don't run out of time. We would love to get all your questions. We'll talk about it more later. But we're going to go through a variety of instances and how you can use these features for stuff like progressive profiling, dynamic web personalization, a whole slew of things, 1-2 punches. There it is. So why use Klaviyo Forms? This will look familiar to the people that were here yesterday. But when we decided to design forms and build it from scratch, we really thought as a first principle, like, no one likes coding except for me. I like coding. But really, our customers didn't want to touch code. You can use Signup Forms and the vast majority of its features without having to touch a single lick of code. No HTML, CSS, JavaScript, none of it. You click Publish in the designer, and it shows up on your website. And for those of you that were here yesterday, you saw that live. We won't be doing a live demo today, unfortunately, but if you don't believe me, I'll come over and I'll show you on a website. 2, we wanted to make sure that as people used our product, that they felt familiar with the way it worked. This is going to work exactly the same way as the email template editor. You got blocks on the left, drag it in, you click on one, and it focuses on features specific to that. We wanted to make sure that you guys felt comfortable using the product. 3, and this is something we heard, and I was surprised about it first, but it's been a consistent problem prior to our product where you would have some sort of forms competitor, and you have to thread the needle of data through maybe somebody else, and then into Klaviyo, or maybe some CSVs, and upload and download, and all of this madness to try and just get your profile properties for the people that submitted your form into Klaviyo to do flows and send emails and make campaigns. With us, you just click the button on the form, and it's just there. And the best of all, it's free. Like, frankly, every single feature that we're talking about today, every aspect of forms is entirely free. You don't need to be a paying customer to use any single thing that we're talking about today at all. Cool. So the 4 tips that we talked about yesterday, give a sentence or 2 for each. First, incentivize signups. Emails, contact information are valuable. Give them a reason why they should give you this information. It sounds intuitive, but give them a reason, right? Discount, offer, etc. Design your forms to be on brand. It shouldn't look like you plastered something on your website that somebody else made that doesn't look anything like what you sell. Make it look like your website, a part of it. 3, balance impressions with disruption. This is super important. The best converting form is the form that you can never close because everyone's going to put in their email, but no one's going to be happy with that. Balance it, disrupt when necessary, have meaningful interactions in the same way that you know meaningful interactions via email are important. And the 4th, learn more from new subscribers. As we see here, a birthday. You can use this information later when you're doing a flow, a campaign. When you have this information, you can do a variety of things that otherwise would not be possible. We'll talk more on that with progressive profiling in a moment. So, I've alluded to this. Collecting subscribers, quite frankly, is the tip of the iceberg. We built this product in April. It's been several months out in production. When we started, we didn't even have an image block, radio button, like the things that one would consider so fundamental and basic to a forms product. And we've come a long way. Almost to the point where we might not even need to call it a forms product anymore, and you'll understand why shortly. So the goal of today, and this is a little bit of a joke, we're going to give you guys that like flower power to make you fireball throwing, like email marketer that's going to make lots of money and have a great time designing your website and making sure that all of your interactions are meaningful. So with that, our hypothetical store of the day is foot flare socks. So I got some fun socks on, maybe some wacky socks. Sean's got some socks on too. We may have some socks for you, we'll see. But this store sells socks online. We're going to be using them as inspiration to design the variety of ideas we're going to walk you through to make this feel more in touch with e-commerce and not just some hypothetical. And with that, our 3 main things. First, we're going to target promotions on site with segments. So you're going to know something about someone, and you're only going to show some content once that someone is there. Second, we're going to combine for a 1-2 punch an email and a promotion on site. Third, we're going to start going into progressive profiling. You already know something about someone. You know what you don't know, and you want to know that information. That might be confusing. We're going to talk through it. So I'm going to kick it off to Sean. Idea number 1. Let's go. You go.
All right. So previously to all this, you've had your segments in Klaviyo, and you could use them to personalize your email. And, personalize the content of the email, personalize who gets which email. And now we've connected segments with forms so that you can start to use those segments to personalize your website. So we're going to talk about mainly this feature today, which is segment targeting in forms. You can access it on the Behaviors tab of the Form Builder. But basically, in the By Visitor section, it says target to visitors in a list or segment, and you can pick to show to visitors in certain lists or segments, or don't show to them. Not too crazy, but we're going to leverage this for all of the examples we show to make sure the right people are seeing the form. So before we dive into the example of how you can set one of these up, I wanted to just get the juices flowing on some ideas. So one could be you could do a post-purchase bounce back offer. So after someone purchases, the next time they come to the site, you can give them some sort of coupon or encourage them to purchase again. You can also direct past browsers to new collections. Say people who shopped in one sock collection, might be interested in a new one you have or a related one. You can also just use this as general content. If you have something special about your brand, maybe people forget that you have eco-friendly products or something like that, you can just say, hey, by the way, reminder, like 100% recyclable. You can also use this for a gift guide for holiday shoppers. We've had a couple customers do this where you take people who tend to only shop for Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and you give them a link to your gift guide the first time they come to the site. You can also use this for birthdays. Everyone likes a little confetti on their birthday. Personalize that experience whenever they're on the site. So today we're going to be designing this form. This is for people who previously shopped our animal sock collection. We're going to be pointing them to some new socks in that area. So the steps that we're going to go through is we're going to first create our target segment of sock purchasers. We're going to create the form with the promotional content, and then we're going to target the form to the segment. Nothing too crazy. We're going to walk through every step so you can see it here. So to start, we're going to create the segment. So this is on the List and Segments page. Then we're going to create this segment of people who previously purchased from the collection of animal socks. So what someone has done, placed order at least once, where the collection equals animal socks, just like any other segment. Then we're going to go to the Signup Forms tab. now they're called signup forms, and as Dan mentioned earlier, this is all pretty new functionality, and so we're going to be working over time to sort of split out signup forms from this concept of on-site promotions and on-site personalized content. But for now, the name is a form, and so when you create one, you click Create Signup Form up in the top right, and it's going to ask which list subscribers should be added to. We're going to delete that setting once we get to the form builder, and as I mentioned, we'll be improving this over time. So in the form builder, this is what you'll see initially. We picked a flyout because we want it to slide out from the side of the screen so it doesn't totally bother the person on the site. And the first thing we're going to do is get rid of that email address input. We don't want that. Delete it. Next, we're going to click on the button, which currently says subscribe. And after you click on that, you'll see the settings on the left side are the button actions. Now, at the top, there's the action of the button, which is basically what happens when someone clicks it. And in this case, we don't want it to submit the form. We don't want it to close the form, although you could do that in this case. We want it to go to a URL, which is the collection of those new animal socks. So we're going to choose Go to URL, and then we can choose our destination URL. In this case, it's the collection of the socks. And we're going to change the text to something like, check it out. They're not subscribing for anything. They're just moving along. Now, I don't want to go too much into the design here because I think you can explore the template editor. If you have questions afterwards, we'd be happy to chat about how you could design this. Basically, we added a background image of some jungly looking leaves. We added our ostrich socks, and then we made the button have a slight transparent background. That's called a ghost button. I learned this recently. It's all the rage in the design world right now. So you can make this form. And now we're going to dive into showing this on your site. So while the odds are you're not going to be in the segment that you're targeting, and so you don't want to add this form to your site without checking first that it looks good, it makes sense in the context of the page you add it to. So what we're going to do is we're first going to set the by visitor targeting to show to all visitors, and we're going to add URL targeting where it only shows on certain URLs containing Klaviyo pop-up testing. And now when we publish the form in the top right, we publish it, it goes live on our site. And now when you go to the website and you add that Klaviyo pop-up testing as a parameter to the URL, just after a question mark, that'll be your private way of checking the form on your site and making sure it looks good. So in this case, it looks just fine. We're good to go. So we're going to go back to the form builder, and now we're going to target it to our segment. So in the by visitor section, you now pick show to visitors in certain lists and segments, and we're going to choose that animal sock purchasers segment. This list contains all of the lists and segments in your Klaviyo account, so you can use existing ones or new ones you create. So now that we have that, we're going to hit publish, and we're good to go. So to reiterate how we did this, we created the segment, we created the form, and then we targeted the form to the segment. Nothing too crazy. All right. So there's a ton that you can do with this. So we have all these great minds in e-commerce in the room, and we want to take a chance for everyone to chat with each other about some ideas of how to use this. So we're going to take 90 seconds, 2 minutes, to just chat with the person next to you about how you think you could use this, and after that we'll shout out some ideas so we can all hear the good ones. All right, let's take a minute. Oh. You want to get the socks? Yeah. I think you want to... Should I show it to them? Yeah. No, just say you get a sock. Or nice idea. You can also walk around. Don't throw it because it might hit the birds. Yeah.
So how does the system know that the person visiting the site has previously purchased?
Great question.
Is it a cookie or they have to be logged in?
It's if they've ever clicked through a Klaviyo email or signed up through a Klaviyo form, then they're tracked by Klaviyo. Sorry.
subtle, not subtle way.
All right, let's bring it back around. So who has some cool ideas of how you could use this? Let's hear someone. Anyone?
So my site actually sells socks.
Oh.
We have an animal
I love
socks
it.
collection. One thought I had is we have seasonal customers who come and buy the same kind of stuff at the same time of the year every
Yeah.
year. So you could create a segment for one of those.
Yeah, and-
Target them at like Christmas or Easter or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah. To repeat for everyone, just like targeting a form to people who are only shop during Christmas or Easter or some special time of the year. Any other ideas?
Get a sock.
Customers that are always looking for like 3XL size, which we rarely carry,
Oh,
but they are so doubted and they're always emailing me. So if they've bought it before, maybe like a flyout that if we have them in stock, that it's
oh yeah.
available.
Oh yeah, that's cool. That's a good idea. So just to repeat for the
I do
room,
wanna
it's
throw this out.
when special things are in stock, like 3XL shirts, having a flyout.
Yeah, I was thinking you can do like, if you've got a segment of high value, super high value, with VIP customers, then using the pop-up to kind of guide them to a collection that's hidden that only they have access to.
Oh yeah,
So
that's a good idea.
Yep.
really incent them to be-
Yeah, keeping it a true VIP program. It's not just in just saying it. It's like actually they only get the product. Right here.
I think this might be our last one.
We have. Oh.
Directing to other parts like your rewards program, so if someone is coming
Yeah, man.
back and they haven't signed up, letting them know that you have a rewards program.
Yeah, so people already signed up, and then it's let's get them to the rewards section. Right.
And
One
you get a
last one.
sock.
I don't know if you can do this, but based on like the Bandage cart value, like they're really close to the free shipping number, you have a pop out that says like, hey, you're really close, or hey, did you know you got free shipping?
Yeah, yeah. If the started checkout event
And
comes to
you also get
Klaviyo,
sock.
and once the segment calculates, you can then show them on site the pop-up of, hey, you're getting close to getting free shipping. All right, we'll have time at the end for more questions. Or if you had a fantastic idea, you can just shout that out at the end. We want to move on to the other ideas. So the second idea is combining on-site content with email campaigns. This is pretty similar to what we just talked about. But instead of doing implicit targeting, where it's just based on what the person has done before and then showing them a form, we're now going to do explicit targeting, where based on what you did in Klaviyo, you're going to target them with personalized content. So to run through a couple ideas here, you can use this to reinforce email content on site. The same thing you sent an email for, they can see it on your website. You can target email recipients that didn't click the email, but did open the email. So basically people who maybe you didn't get the message across to, they'll see it on the site. Then you could have a special experience for people who did click through, something special, consistent experience. You can also connect this to flows, so you could have a segment of people who receive the flow within a flow email within 30 days. They go to the site and it reinforces the same thing. So today we're going to go through an email campaign we sent to only VIPs for 10% off. And on the website, we're going to reinforce the same thing for people who didn't actually click on the email, but only opened it. So the way we're going to do this is we have our email campaign. We're going to create that. We're then going to create the segments of both recipients and clickers. And then we're going to target the form to people who clicked, who received but didn't click. So this is our email template for this campaign. You can't see it as a nice little faded sock background because of the wonderful contrast. But what we're going to do is first go back to the main campaign page because we need to create this segment of people who received and clicked this email before the email has even gone out. So the way you can do this in Klaviyo is you can access every message has a 6-digit identifier. And you can find that in the top URL there for the campaign. In this case, we're going to copy paste that little ID. And when we create our segment of, say, recipients, we're going to say received email at least once, where message equals that 6-digit ID. And this way, before you've even sent the campaign, these segments are set up so that everyone who gets the email, it all starts at one time. We also have, we'll make the click segment, same logic, just a click metric where message equals that ID. Now back to the form builder, we're going to create the sign-up form. And this time we're going to make an embed so you can see that process. And when I go through to the designer, we're going to, again, breeze through the design, but we added some socks. We added a Shop Now button. That Shop Now button will redirect to these summer socks. And then we'll go to the Behaviors tab. So here again, we're going to test it out on our site before we actually deploy it to the segment. So again, we're going to add that URL targeting to only URLs containing Klaviyo pop-up testing. And to add an embed to your site, we need to know where to put the embed. I like to think of this as like putting a flag in the ground on your site. So when you go to publish, also on the left side there, we're going to give you a little piece of code. And you just need to put that somewhere on your website, and wherever it is, that's where we'll inject all of this, this form. So Footflare Socks is a Shopify site. I assume a lot of you are Shopify. And so in here, I can just add a custom HTML block. I'm going to do that quickly here. And I'm just going to paste in that little embed div into that location. And now when you go to the site and we add our URL targeting, you'll see the form appear right below the header image right here. So now that it looks like the way we want, we're going to go back to the form builder, and now we're going to target it to those segments we created before this campaign has even gone out. We're going to show it to visitors in the recipients segment, but don't show it to people in the clicked segment. And with that, you publish the changes, and now it's on the site. So now, once you send out this campaign, people will have this experience once they go to the homepage. So to reiterate, we created the email campaign. Then we pre-created those segments based on that ID of the recipients and the people who will click it. And then we created a form targeted to those two groups. So that was pretty quick. I realized that was a lot of content. We want to take just a minute or two to take any questions on how you do any of those things. If you couldn't see in the back, feel free to ask a quick question. We'll have more time at the end. We just want to take a few now in case there's something that was totally lost or I skimmed through. Anyone?
In the beginning, when you were a couple of steps back, you were creating, I think, I don't remember what step that was. There was a part that says there's a tag and with some random alphanumeric code. What was that?
The div. Is that
Are you talking about
The code for the campaign.
this
one?
piece or the campaign
The
code?
campaign piece.
Keep going back.
Yep.
Yeah, where did you get that?
Great.
Right
So
there.
yeah, you can get, currently it's available in the URL.
Okay.
Obviously we could improve the product to make this a little more accessible, but for now that's where you can access it. As a note, every object in Klaviyo has one of these 6-digit IDs, and it's a good way to, we reference things everywhere with these things.
And are all the stuff are there help documents that are going to live in Klaviyo that walk through these steps?
Yeah, so there are help documents. I wrote a blog about 3 or 4 weeks ago that has walking through a lot of these pieces, but after the conference we're going to make sure all this stuff is available so that it's not like if you missed it, you don't get the info.
These slides will be available to everyone.
Yeah, question?
I just thought of an interesting idea. I don't
Okay.
know if it's for other people. We've been trying to figure out for our VIPs, we want to gift them something, but we don't want to pay for shipping, just to send them this one little gift. So this is, we've been trying to figure out how do we get it so when they do order again, we get that gift into their box. So this is a good
Interesting.
way to be like, hey, come redeem your gift. Here's the pop-up, and it's a hidden product that no one else can see.
Cool.
And then add it to your cart, and then we can give that gift. So this is.
Yeah, it's a good idea. Makes sense.
Oh, it's a fantastic idea.
Yeah. One more question?
Yeah, can you add basically fields and stuff like this? If we want to segment, use this to basically have a survey that says, hey, what are you interested in?
Perfect. Perfect segue question because I'm going to hand off this clicker to Dan, who is going to cover exactly how to do that. All right.
Did you guys plant that?
No.
No.
I'll
My name
pay
is
you
Dan.
afterwards.
Do you want a sock? He should have a sock. Can you give him a sock?
I'll give him a sock. All right. Hand off to Dan, who's going to talk about
cool.
collecting more data.
So to be clear, we're going to talk a good chunk about what I think you just described, and if we didn't fully answer your question at the end, we'll circle back to it. But learn more about your existing profiles. For those, we mentioned it in the beginning, it was one of our tips. We talked about it yesterday. Well, so far, we've mostly talked about this in the scope of new people. They come to your website, they sign up on a sign-up form, you get a profile property from them. But what about everyone you already know about? You want to know more things about them, so you can hit them with a better flow, a better campaign. You can target them better for on-site messaging, et cetera, et cetera. We all realize that the information that you have at your disposal are the tools at which you can actually make just more meaningful interactions. I like to think of this in the way that AB described it during his presentation yesterday, where the more information you have and the more you can customize someone's experience, you can become closer to that interaction him and his wife had with the local barkeep at the restaurant down the road. I feel that way pretty strongly, actually. So, all right, a couple things. what we're going to talk about progressive profiling. And that might sound like a scary term, but realistically all it is getting more information about customers that you already know about. You already have their email, but you want to know more about them. You want to progressively profile, add to their profile, etc. So there's a number of reasons why you might want to do this. I won't go through some of the ones that are on behind me, but one that's particularly interesting is if you haven't had someone open an email, say in a couple months, they're starting to lapse, you don't want them to unsubscribe, you don't want them to report you as spam, why not just ask them what they're interested in? Like, if you already have their email, you can progressively profile them. So like, hey, what content are you interested in receiving? Do you want to know about our new sock collections? Do you want to know about new marketing campaigns? Or do you just want like some tips on lifestyle, etc., right? There's all kinds of things that you can do here to improve your unsubscribe rates, your click-through rates, make sure that people are more engaged. You can just ask them. That's just a kind of my perspective, the tip of the iceberg. So we're going to create the form behind me. We won't go into the design strategy or things of that nature, so if you're interested in that, we can talk about it afterwards, or find us at one of the one-on-one session things. But this looks like a normal form, right? Nothing here looks special. The main thing that's going to be different is that we're going to pre-fill that email address with the email that we already know about the customer. We'll talk about why we chose this strategy in a moment. But in short, what this will allow us to do, and the goal at which we have, is I want to talk to people that I know about that that I don't know what sock interests they have, whether it's wacky or dressy, right? I want to know that about them, but I don't want to ask people a question that they've already answered before. That's kind of annoying, right? Like, I ask, like, what's your favorite color? And then the next day I ask, like, hey, what's your favorite color, right? That's pretty annoying. So, 3 steps. Very similar to the ones you've already heard. Build a segment of profiles without that profile property. In this case, it's going to be sock_pref. Then we're going to create a form that tries to gather that, the one that you just saw here. Then we're going to autofill the email input so that there are less interactions that the user must engage with to be able to provide you information. And there'll be a little bonus at the end of how we can make it even more efficient than the one that you just saw. So, back to the list and segments page. What you'll see here is that we're creating a segment called No Sock Preference Property. Underneath that, we ask for a property about someone where sock pref is not set. And note, if you have not seen the not set, make sure that type equals text. That's a little gotcha, just so you know. The next thing, gather sock preferences. What list should these subscribers be added to? You can create a new list. One recommendation is maybe make this list such that it doesn't have double opt-in so that you don't give them an extra email when it's unnecessary if you already know about them. And then a pop-up as well for this particular example. You can use whatever you want. You can make it an embed. You can make it just like underneath your banner like, hey, do you like wacky or fun? And that's all you need to do. So, I know I'm talking quickly. I'm just really excited. We're now in the default state. We're starting from 0. We've added some text to really talk through like, hey, what are we trying to do here? Make sure the customer is on board with what we're trying to engage them with. Then we're going to click on the email address. Now, again, part of the philosophy behind the form builder is that settings that are localized to an input or a block, you click on them and they happen on the left-hand side. You'll see here we have a checkbox, autofill with email if already tracked. So if your customer clicked your campaign, this will be filled. If your customer ever checked out on that browser, this will be filled. Or that they submitted a different form on that browser in the past, it will already be filled. So what this means is that this customer will not need to type in their whole email address to give you this one piece of information. Also, if it's the wrong email address, they can edit it. We'll drag in a checkbox here. We've talked about some of these things in the past, but drag it in. Wacky socks, dressy socks are associated with the sock pref property. Ooh, that's fun. Sock pref property. And then we're going to click on the button. We still want to submit the form to a list. We change the text to submit preferences. We update the success message to have appropriate text. And then we style it. We're not going to get into styling. If you're interested in how we did it, again, we'll talk about it later. Now, Behaviors tab. Again, Behaviors tab is when, how, and to whom do you show this form. So you've seen it before when Sean was up here. We're going to go and show the visitors to only the people that are in the no sock preference category, or they don't have that. So the moment they submit this form, they'll never see it again, which is pretty cool. In fact, one could even say that you might want to show this to them every day until they give you that information, if you're interested enough about it, or don't. It's up to you. Again, impressions with disruption. And the last thing is, we want this to only show up on the product page, because if it shows up on every page, that would be pretty annoying. So with that, this is what the form would look like If we were already cookied, already tracked individual, they have the email pre-filled. All they would need to do is click on a checkbox and then click the button, and you now get this additional property about them on the profile. And you can imagine you can have a whole set of these things, as many profiles as you want, many individual small engagements where you continuously ask people for their preferences and flesh out their profiles. But, my opinion, we can do better. So this is actually kind of annoying, right? We talked about having an email input so that they don't have to type as much. That you want them to have fewer engagements with the form so that they will actually submit it. But now we're asking them to click a checkbox and then click a button. Why do we have them do both, right? Why can't it just be one click? So what I'm about to talk to you guys about is a feature that we just recently released, I think on Tuesday, something like that. So it's pretty cool. I enjoy it. What we did is we dragged in 2 images, a dressy sock and a wacky sock. Now you have the visual cue of like, what are you thinking about? What's in mind? And as you can tell, we like our socks. We'll click on the sock for the localized properties. This is the new feature, an image click action. Note, you can also do this with a button. One of the unique things about our form is that you can have as many buttons as you want and do as many things as you want, and the same thing with images. So everything can go to different lists, have different properties, and we'll talk about that. So here, you have most of the same properties as a button. We're going to choose Submit to Form. We'll choose the list that we wanted to submit this to, in this case, the newsletter. We add in the hidden fields section a sock pref equals dressy. What this means is that this is a static property that is going to always be submitted whenever the user clicks on this button, or in this case, image. So what that means is that just in the same way that every single time they click on this image, they would have a $ source and gather sock preference value, they'll also have a sock pref dressy value. So you can imagine that now, when I click this, profile has sock pref equals dressy. When I click on this, sock pref equals wacky. Now, what this means is that we've reduced the number of clicks that the user must engage with by 50%, right? They only need to click on one button, and they've already given you the information that they're engaged in. This is something when we develop products we think about a lot, is how do we make the fewest number of clicks necessary for our customers to engage with our product. Something we talk about at Klaviyo all the time. Whenever we're designing a new feature, a new UX interaction. And for your forms, you can take that to heart as well to try and build really engaging forms that people will want to interact with and will be super easy to interact with. So with that, recap. Build a segment that does not have the profile property. In this case, that was sock preference. So we find all the people that we don't know this information about. Then we say create a form that makes that property, the one that we've been talking about. And then the third thing that's important here is to autofill that email input if we already know the item. I see a hand in the back. Get to you in just a second. I know you talked about surveys. So surveys are effectively the same thing. You can utilize this for people that you've already tracked. Okay, perfect. So I want to harp on a couple things here. We launched this product in April. We worked on it for 2.5, 3 months-ish, something like that. Before then, yeah. I mean, like it was like rip out, ready to go. You heard me talk earlier. We didn't have a radio input or like really anything. Most features were not there. And we listened to our customers to build out what we have today and features that give us a competitive advantage, that do things that other people can't do. The segment targeting is something that many other competitors can't do. We want to listen more to your feedback. We want more interesting interactions. How will you use this? Will you do this for like an animal sock collection? Will you do it for something else? It's up to you guys. We love learning about it, and please reach out to us. I'm an engineer on the team. Sean's the PM on the team. Without your feedback, we don't know the next step to take, so we listen to it very much. All right, with that, questions. Boom. All right, I'm sorry. He had a question just first. He jumped the gun. What's up?
Sure, okay, so we've actually just coincidentally been kind of like working with this for the last week and figuring a lot about it, but we couldn't quite get it figured out because is there something if they're already on a list, then and they already have some of those, because we want to basically ask them what they want, right? They want salon deals or restaurant deals or whatever. If they already have that field filled out on a list, isn't there something that field won't be updated? That seems to be the roadblock to fit.
You know what? I'm going to ask. Can we give him the microphone? Just sorry, I couldn't quite grab the question from over here. I thought I got it. So let me try and make sure I understand correctly. You're submitting to a list. You are targeting specific lists. Is that correct?
Sure.
This will be great. Thank you.
Okay. So we basically want to ask people to update their deal preferences for us. You know,
Got
use
it.
it in beauty salons, restaurants,
Mhm.
whatever. The problem we had seemed to be that if somebody was already on a list, and we had a form that was targeting, let's say, our main list
Mhm.
for City X, right? If they'd already filled out that preference before, so for example, they'd already told us they were interested in deals in I don't know, Back Bay or whatever. Let's say they moved and they wanted to change that. It seemed that that new information wouldn't go in, or was I totally misunderstanding that? Or
So
effect?
I'm going to make an assumption. Was the form showing up?
Yes, it was.
Okay, then it might be slightly separate. I would need to look at the. Are you
so
touching the
whenever,
specific issue?
Whenever you submit a form, we do, if they're already on the list, we also run web tracking with all that data. So it's as if we submitted it like fresh. So it should update that. We can take a look after at your specific
Yeah,
instance
it seemed
because
like if they're already on the list, none of the information updated. So I didn't know if that
Interesting.
was
That's
intentional or
interesting.
not.
Yeah.
That's
Not
definitely unusual,
intentional,
not the norm to say the least. I'm going to go over there in the back. There was a question over there first from the last round. Facebook Pixel. Can you describe a little bit more about the specific use case in mind?
So if I wanted to run an ad to people who had seen the pop-up but didn't sign up, so would I just do it, how would I do that? Because I might be showing different forms to different people. So I can't actually just go to the page. So now what I would do is get Facebook to give me an audience of people who have visited a particular page, right? But right now, if I'm showing different forms to different people, I can't retarget a Facebook ad since I don't know which form I've seen. So can I tie a pop-up to a Facebook pixel? I guess it's a more accurate question.
Yeah, not right now.
Actually, so here's an idea, just off the cuff. What you could do, because Facebook pixels are really small and you wouldn't want to take up a bunch of space, you could go into a rich text block. You could create, if I'm remembering my details correctly, a specific Facebook pixel for that form and add it to the rich text block as an image. They won't see it. You'll know whenever time that pixel comes up that they saw that form, that they had that impression, and you can retarget them. Certainly, we want to make that experience better. This is the first time I'm hearing of this case, but it's interesting to know about, and that's exactly what I'm getting at. We want to know more about what people want to do. Does that appropriately answer your question? Perfect. There was one over here.
Are conditional fields in the roadmap at all?
And by conditional fields, you mean people see a field only if they've not filled it out, or if
or based on a previous they answer a question above and then get a separate question.
Yeah, we've definitely heard it before. I'd say we don't have it on the roadmap right now. Just so you guys know how we think about roadmaps at Klaviyo, we tend to plan concretely about a month out. And then we have a rough idea of what we're doing in 2 months and a very high level idea of the future. But we don't actually say, I can't say we'll build this feature, in middle of January or something, because we want to always be pivoting based on what's most important for our customers. But we definitely heard that, and especially in the use cases of using forms more as surveys and sort of longer questionnaires where you want to make sure you're personalizing and changing the form as they flow through and select different things. So definitely heard it.
Cool, thanks.
Is it necessary to capture the email address? Is that used when the form is submitted back, or?
Okay, so the question was, is
have
it?
it hidden?
Yep, so the question is it necessary to show the email address, or can we just have it hidden? So there are benefits to explicitly showing the email address. However, we are considering and working towards an option where you don't need to have the email address technically present to submit. Yeah. So you are correct. We don't technically need it. You do need it today with the current feature set. We intend on making updates to that, though I don't have any specific dates.
Yeah, I think there's some nuances of exactly how we make sure we don't allow you to delete an email input, but for other people making a sign-up form, then they might forget an email input, and then their form doesn't work. So there's some questions there. We have some rough ideas of how we do it, but we haven't had time to flesh it out.
Got it. Your hand was up?
Kind of a silly question, but when you have a segmented form, does the user need to click through the email to see the form, or can a viewer come from a different
question?
Anywhere. Doesn't
matter.
matter.
Yeah, this is a question earlier as well. The form being tracked by Klaviyo means that you've either clicked through at any point a Klaviyo email to your website, or you've filled out a Klaviyo form. And once someone does that, we basically cookie them in their browser, and then we forever know what their email address is. And so when we do the segment targeted forms, All we're doing is taking that email, sending it over to Klaviyo and asking what lists and segments they're in, and then sending back which forms they should see.
Yep.
So it's not that they have to click through an email that day. It's just if any point in the past they click through on that device.
Quick caveat, you're totally correct. Be aware that that's only for the present domain. The cookie is only valid for the present domain at which they were tracked. So if you have multiple domains, cookie doesn't translate between them as a security feature of browsers.
By domains, he means like, Klaviyo.com versus like, KlavioBoss.com.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. I saw some other questions here. There was one right there. Yes?
I saw that you have a don't show again after submit, but do you have a don't show again after close?
Yeah. So let me see if I have it here. Do you? Let's see.
Behaviors tab?
We have a don't show again some X number of days. This is if I had it up.
You gotta go way back.
Yeah, it's way back.
So there's two settings. There's one is don't show form again after it's been submitted or go to URL action. That makes so that in this form, if someone clicks the check it out button, they're not going to go to that page and then you're going to go again like, hey, check it out. You want to make sure they've interacted with that form. It's over for them. And the other setting is show again X days after closing. You could set that setting to 5,000 days or something so that they don't see it for another many, many years. And that should effectively make it so that they never see it again after closing.
And we are going to have to cut here with questions.
Okay.
Just so you guys are aware, just a few notes before you head out. There is going to be a session upstairs through the breakfast room. There's the Klaviyo Lounge, and you will be able to chat with our product and engineering team there.
Yep.
So Sean and Dan are going to head up there, so please keep those questions for then. Also, please visit the app, both for the slides that they showed today, and then also to review and post any feedback for their session. You will have to create a guidebook account, and then you should be able to go to the session itself and request the content. Let's give it one more round of applause here for Sean and Dan. Thank you guys.
Thank you guys. You guys have been awesome. Please do leave us feedback. We really do appreciate it. Your question was, do you need to show? Oh, yeah, thanks, man.